So our mind wants an answer and wants to draw a conclusion and figure it out and all this sorts of stuff. We need answers. That forcing piece, right? This is a different approach because we're not trying to figure anything out. We're not trying to fix anything or get to a solution. What we're doing is feeling into these moments, into this felt sense of these moments of what's happening in our bodies. Hey beautiful, welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self-love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things emotions, energetics, and self-awakening, Jenna Smith. And I am super stoked, so excited for today's conversation. It is a listener's write-in submission, and I've actually gotten a little behind with these submissions. So the next few episodes, I will be answering your questions, touching on topics that you have written in about, and I love it. I love that this space has become a true conversation. Like, your questions are often ones that so many people are thinking about and might not be asking, or just as a collective, I always love to zoom out, right? And think of like that collective piece of, I love to always touch on what you are needing, what you have questions about, what you want to hear on the show, of course, but also just your question is also touching so many other people's lives too. So I am just so thankful for those that do write in. And, okay, let's just jump in. Let's jump in. So our listener asked, everyone talks about trauma being stuck in your hips. How the heck do you release it? Absolutely. Trauma can get stuck in your hips. However, it can also get stuck in other areas of your body too. And I know that there's a lot to say here. There's a lot to unpack because, yes, your hips is, of course, a place where energy can get stored. However, there's anywhere in your body, trauma can get stored. So let's break this down from both a physiological and energetic perspective. Because when we talk about trauma getting stuck, we're talking about how unprocessed energy and possibly survival responses, those imprints, get imprinted into our tissues, into our body, into our soma. So our hips, including the hip joints, surrounding muscles, the psoas, you think about this area of the body, and it's a physical crossroads. Like, there's a lot going on in this pelvic area of our body, right? They connect our butt to our legs. They bear weight. They allow movement, hinging, bending, stabilizing the spine. Like, there's a lot of connection and a lot of work going on here for us to be able to stand, to bend, to sit, all of these things. And because of this area of our body is especially sensitive to possible tension patterns or stress responses. And beyond anatomy, many movement and embodiment practitioners, let's say, describe the hips as an emotional drawer, like of our body, holding space, a holding area for unprocessed feelings and that energy, because it's so interconnected to so many different parts of our body as well. So when we experience a threat or trauma or chronic stress, the autonomic nervous system, it activates, right? We go into that fight, flight, freeze response. And the body possibly might contract or, braces itself to protect itself. And then, XYZ, we go into whatever response or patterns that we're used to. So if that emotional or energetic charge doesn't get processed or dissipating, the body can hold on to these, protective postures and these imprints over time. And that's often what people, sense as this stuckness in the hips or the lower back or the pelvis. And we also hear, hips talked about the center of creativity. This is more of like a chakra standpoint. Like this is where your sacral chakra sits, and that activates creativity, sensuality, emotional expression. So in practices like yoga and somatic work, for that sacral area, just around the hips area, it connects to creative flows and relationships and emotions, and just this metaphor. Is metaphor the right word? Just looking from this perspective of an energetic perspective, using the chakra system, it resonates, right? It's connecting. That's why I love like merging the science with the woo, like from the science standpoint, you have all these muscles connecting and from that physiological standpoint, but now coming in from an energetic standpoint, there's a lot of energetic expression happening in this area of our body too. However, it's also important to clarify that this does not mean that all trauma lives in this area of your body. Not all trauma lives in your hips. Okay? Trauma is systemic. It impacts the nervous system, the brain, the body, the energy field. So absolutely, trauma can get stuck in your hips. Think of the hips as one possible, point of that storage unit, let's say, right? Like any sort of energetic imprint can get stuck, okay? So that said, let's kind of dive into this a little bit deeper. How trauma, how energy, how stuck, emotion, stuck energy can get impacted, or not impacted, can get imprinted and compounded in other areas of the body as well. So from an emotion code perspective, if you've heard of the emotion code by Dr. Bradley Nelson, certain emotions may energetically resonate or get stuck in specific body regions. So for example, per the emotion code perspective, fear or resentment, those emotions get stuck in the hips. Grief gets, impacted, compounded in the chest. Anger in the chest, the lower back. Like these aren't universal truths, but Dr. Bradley Nelson, if you haven't read the emotion code, it is an incredible book. And it helps really bring a curiosity to like what your body is showing you. I personally work a lot with myself in my chest. I have a lot of pent up anger in my chest. For someone else, it might be in that lower back, right? But what your body, really connecting to what your body is showing and telling you. So now from a felt sense perspective, Eugene Gendlin created this terminology of the felt sense, and he describes it as just like a subtle wordless awareness, right, of what's happening inside, like really connecting to that body perspective. We're not labeling emotions, we're sensing. Oh, I feel pressure. I feel tightness. I feel heaviness. I feel warmth. Like what is that felt sense going on within your body? Noticing how those then sensations might impact our behaviors, our actions. And also how those felt senses may change or dissipate or go away as we give them actual attention to truly be felt. And then they dissipate, right? Because so often, how easy is it to shove it under the rug? Oh, I feel this pounding in my chest, but I don't have time for this. I got to do the thing, or whatever that might be. To actually give space to this felt sense within our body. And other modalities echo this concept also, like somatic experience, that is speaking to that incomplete activation of, this is what I talk about a lot on the show and just in the work that I do, of these loops, right? We go into said response, fight, flight, freeze response. And do we finish that loop? Are we allowing ourselves to complete this loop to then come back to that parasympathetic state, right? So somatic experiencing really helps in those incomplete activation responses to allow that discharge cycle to finish that loop versus getting trapped in the body and staying there. Hence, next time we have a similar experience, we're triggered, go into that same survival loop versus allowing it to complete. Polyvagal theory is something else also that explains how chronic stress can keep the nervous system locked in those states of fight, flight, freeze, hypervigilance. So I love how there's different modalities, right? Different ways to possibly approach a very similar and paralleled concept down to its core, right? That there is something to say about trauma, how energy, how emotions can get stuck within their body. And here's just one other little bit to add to this layering, right? The concept of generational or inherited traumas. Like if trauma can be passed down biologically, epigenetically, right? You think about how the body remembers, or how you have these same cycles, oh, my mom struggled with this and her grandma or her mom struggled with the same thing and now I'm struggling with the same thing. Like these imprints don't just live in our minds, right? They live in our cells, our fascia, our energy fields, our DNA. And we can break those cycles too. Oh, it's so fascinating. So that's that first part of your question. Everyone says trauma gets stuck in the hips. Okay. So absolutely, yes, it can. But also think of it as your whole soma, as your whole body, right? So let's segue now into the second part of the submission question of how the heck do you release it? The short answer here is by becoming deeply attuned to your body, to that felt sense of your inner world. So most traditional talk therapies, let's kind of now break this down. The short answer was feeling, right? Becoming deeply attuned to those felt senses within your body. Now, really broadening this a little bit is most traditional talk therapies take a top-down approach. Okay, so we analyze, we reframe, we understand. We're really in that cognitive conditioning, that cognitive awareness, right? Incredibly supportive for awareness and having safety, in this therapeutic container. But a lot of times, if we stop there, it's like we're only half-baked, right? Like we're only halfway there, right? Yes, the mind understands this. The mind feels safe. We have awareness, but let's bridge that gap. Let's bring the body into this equation now. So the bottom-up approach, think of it as the somatic work, the energetic work. And this is the approach that I use, starting in the body. Yes, the mind will always be there, right? But we're starting in the body. We work through sensations, through feelings, through emotions, through energetic flows. Because trauma is felt before it is ever thought about. Think about that. Our responses, our survival responses, trauma, it is always felt before our mind catches up. So think about a pretty intense scenario here, but think like if you walk into the street of oncoming traffic, your body will halt, like pause, survival instincts kick in prior to your mind ever thinking about it, right? Then your mind's like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing? Like there's traffic. But your body will physically try to survive and will halt before your mind catches up. So your body is always there. But so often the mind is then louder or more intense. Those thoughts start to come in. So then we bypass the body and go straight to the cognitive piece. And your mind might also say like, okay, I'm safe now, right? I'm safe. Maybe talking to your therapist or, in that container, I'm safe cognitively. Yep, got this in my mind. But if your body is still holding on to chronic tension or that tightness in your hips or that rapid heartbeat in your chest, that message or that awareness might be there, but it doesn't fully land, right? Healing requires helping your body also believe or also get into the same bridging of the gap of what your mind possibly might know already. It's bringing in that conscious piece, that cognitive conscious awareness. We have to allow the subconscious now to also believe what you're cognitively willpowering, trying to tell yourself. So how the heck do you release it? How do we release this trauma, this stuck energy, these imprints? We release trauma by connecting or reconnecting with our bodies, not as a concept, not as a cognitive awareness, but as a felt experience. Because if we only rely on cognition and reframing, we stay in our head. We're in that top-down approach. We have to bring our attention downward into the chest, into the belly, into the hips, into the legs, into the parts of us that have been holding on to these charges. So our mind wants an answer and wants to draw a conclusion and figure it out and all this sorts of stuff. We need answers. That forcing piece, right? This is a different approach because we're not trying to figure anything out. We're not trying to fix anything or get to a solution. What we're doing is feeling into these moments, into this felt sense of these moments of what's happening in our bodies. And by doing that, we're closing that gap between the mind, between attention, and the felt sense of our actual experience. This is like the embodiment piece. So we're closing, we're like reversing that dissociation in a sense, okay? Because when we dissociate, we're in our minds, we're dissociating, we're avoiding. Now we're reversing it. We're allowing that felt sense to come up. When we want to run, we stay, okay? We're becoming more attuned to our body. We're including our bodies because most people live up in that cognitive piece. Now we're including what's down underneath. And you can't get there by solely thinking or willpowering your way out of it. You get there by feeling, by sensing, and by experiencing. As we start feeling into the body, we'll begin to recognize these subtle, possibly contractions, or, oh my gosh, my chest is tight, or, oh, I do have this pit in my stomach. I have this tension in my hips. My lower back is like being triggered right now. It's starting to contract. That internal, don't do that, it's not safe, or you can't go there. Those cues begin in the body long before your mind interprets them and tries to make sense of what's going on. So for example, okay, let's bring in another example here. If we feel sadness, people often, might feel it in their heart or maybe in their bellies, like with that pit in your stomach. Like that's where I feel it. Okay, I have butterflies in my stomach. Or maybe, that those butterflies might be a fear or a nervousness. This is a very bio-individual standpoint, right? This is a very bio-individual, meaning everyone is different. Like I said, I hold a lot of anger in my chest. Well, my husband, I'll bring him into this equation. He holds a lot of his anger in his back. So this is a very bio-individual. And for the sake of this episode, let's frame how, as a collective piece here, how we could work through this without personally, one-on-one working with you, or, you best, right? So for the sake of all the listeners, everyone that's going to come in to this episode, you can start here. Let's create kind of like a 5-part rhythm of how you can get started in releasing your energetic imprints or your trauma for the sake of the question of the show. So number 1 of this 5-part rhythm is the awareness. Absolutely. Begin to bring attention to those parts of your body, that felt sense. If it's in your hips or your pelvis, what are you noticing? Tightness, numbness, warmth, contractions. You could ask yourself, what do my hips feel? What are they feeling? What do they feel like when I'm safe? When I'm guarded? When I'm in that survival response? And that's going to help bridge the gap, because so often we stay stuck in the mind, right? So the mind is still a part of the equation, but now we're bridging this gap and coming down into the body to actually feel. Bring that felt sense into the awareness equation. Number 2 of this rhythm is movement. You can invite small mindful motions. If we'll stick with the hip example, you could, gently do hip circles, just swaying back to forth, rocking. This allows the body to now explore, okay, safety. There's safety here in movement. Bring in breathing into this equation. Whatever feels good to you in those moments. Number 3 is safety and regulation. You can slow your breath, soften your jaw and your shoulders, allowing them to relax, allowing your nervous system to know this is okay to release. 4 is expression. If an emotion arises, maybe you start crying, or you burst out in laughter, or you start trembling, or those breaths, you're really connecting with those breaths and you find yourself sighing. Like allow those expressions. It's your system, detoxing, recalibrating, allowing in this dissipation, this discharge of that energy that's been stuck in your body. And number 5 is integrate, the integration piece, allowing yourself to rest, to ground, to journal what came up for you, those feelings. Reflect on possibly what shifted. If maybe your back popped, or you had this sigh, that exhale, that you just felt yourself release. And this isn't a one and done thing. Something that I work with my clients a lot with, I call it the riffin approach. Same type of concept, but it's in those moments of when you're triggered or when you're activated, right? You could use this riffin approach. I'll run through this really quick. If that 5-step rhythm of awareness, movement, safety, regulation, expression, integration. This is another approach when you're in those moments to be able to release and discharge and re-regulate. Because releasing it's layered, right? Healing is layered. It's ongoing. This isn't a one and done thing. Sometimes you'll feel immediate relief. Other times it unfolds gradually. Sometimes you might feel heightened for a while, and then it's a wave. You come down and then you're back up, and you go down and then you're back up. That synergistic, infinity symbol. So the riffin approach is when you're activated, when you find yourself in a dysregulated state. This is an in the moment, right? You allow yourself to turn up the volume of that emotion until it starts to dissipate. And if there's more emotions coming up, you could continue and repeat the process. This is a lovely somatic practice that once I start working with clients within root cause therapy sessions, I remind them of this is what you can do in those moments of processing, releasing, and re-regulating again. So R of the riffin approach is recognize that feeling or emotion. Allow yourself to recognize, what is it that I'm feeling? I identify where it is in your body. F, feel the feelings. Your emotions are going to start to surface in those moments. F, find out the root by turning inward. What is the root? Why am I feeling this? And then if you have to ask yourself why, allowing yourself the space to feel to that root. And then there's a little apostrophe here. What's the emotion behind the emotion? Sometimes you might release that initial anger. And then there might be emotions coming up after that. Okay, I feel like I released this anger. Now I'm sad. I feel sadness now. So allow yourself to sit in that space, in that safe container that you're giving yourself. And then N is nurture yourself by allowing this space within yourself to feel this emotion, allowing the emotion to come to surface, allowing that energy to be as big as it needs to be. That anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, frustration, what happens when those emotions come up? More often than not, we're shoving them down. Versus allowing ourselves to actually feel through said dysregulated trigger, that fight, flight, freeze. We're allowing ourselves the space to actually feel it and to close that loop in the moments. That is the riffin approach. Very quickly just described that, but that's something that I work with my clients a lot with one-on-one. So now to close out this episode, I know this topic, this could be, an hour-long episode, but I still like to be cognizant of your time. And I like to keep, my episodes half hour or less, because to digest it, to be able to really feel into these episodes. And this topic, this question, it could bring up a lot of curiosity, questions. Some maybe possibly you're like, wait, but now what? Now, where do I go from here? So a couple things that came up to me as I was kind of working through this episode is I wrote down a few things of, the idea of releasing trauma from the hips and things that were coming to me. So a question possibly might be like, can I just stretch my hips hard? Can I just stretch and like be done? Like what I just said, this is one bio individual. So stretching is a great practice, but this isn't a one and done thing, right? So stretching alone, we might not be able to get into that felt sense. Yeah, you might be charging up some energy. Like I love yoga to be able to really get that energy, that charge, through my system. But are we still touching on the emotional and nervous system layer also? We need the safety, the awareness, the intention, the integration. And we might just get stuck in like just that pattern of, okay, I'm going to stretch and I'll be done. Like there's more of that embodiment layer to this. Another question that came up is how long until I feel a shift? Again, bio individual. It varies. Some people might feel an emotional wave or lightness or a discharge or release, calmness right away. Others, it might bring up a lot more. And this is more common than not. Like we are opening a can of worms in a sense, but in a most graceful, gentle way, because here are all the things that have been suppressed for so long. And we can bring them the safety and the space to start unfolding organically, naturally, over like a consistent integration on your healing journey. Another question is, okay, so like I could listen to this episode. Is this going to replace my therapy or healing work? I gently tell you no. This will not replace that. Somatic therapies, even talk therapies, if you're in a talk therapy right now, like this is not to replace, this is to bring into your toolbox. Like somatic therapies, gentle movements, like these are incredible embodiment practices, complements, but it doesn't substitute that deeper therapeutic integrative work if you're working with a practitioner. Or what if strong emotions are coming up, right? This is another very valid question. What if these emotions are coming up? What do I do? First, allow yourself that safety. Like it's a part of the process, because what I just said, you are finally giving space to all these suppressed feelings that you haven't felt for possible years or decades. So if you feel overwhelmed, pause. Okay? Just take a pause. Think of it like a water faucet, okay? You can turn on the water full bore, but that's not the intent here. We're just turning it on slightly, like letting that trickle. And if you get overwhelmed, turn it back off, okay? And then you could turn it on a little more, giving yourself that safety, that grounding. And then you could turn it off again once you kind of get heightened or overwhelmed, right? You could use breath or journaling as a form of integrating too. This work is always to be done. Your healing work, your life work is always to be done in a safe and self-compassionate way. Not in force, not in urgency. Okay? Remember, we're not trying to fix anything. We always make sense. We're bringing that safety back into our body to be all of who we are. So those are just a few questions that came to me as I was kind of writing out this outline. So if anything comes up to you, I would love for you to write it in, ask any more questions about this. So let's kind of wrap up here, summarize a little bit. Absolutely, yes, trauma can be stored in your hips. However, it's not solely your hips, right? Your body is an intelligent map. Trauma, stuck energy, unprocessed emotions can live in any space that they once were tightened or protective or contracted, right? That they held onto and felt too much to process in that moment. Our nervous system was at a capacity and we weren't able to close that loop in those moments. So a main thing to remember is your body holds these imprints. the unfinished stories, the unprocessed loops, that energy that never got a chance to complete. And through awareness, gentle movement, emotional expression, nervous system regulation, energetic alignment, the Riffin approach, right? You could start to explore this, to release it, to discharge, to process. This work is very beautifully bio-individual. Like what creates safety and release for one person might not for another. It might not feel right for another person, and that's completely okay. That's why we need to bring the trust and the safety and the connection to ourselves. And that's what I do within my work, is I help guide you in learning that connection, in learning that self-connection, that self-trust, that safety to be you, right? And if you're exploring this more deeply or noticing strong sensations that are arising, it could be really supportive to begin working with a practitioner trained in somatic work or trauma-informed modalities, someone who can guide you safely through these processes. Because absolutely, you know you best. But sometimes we might need a little help or encouragement or confidence to share that safe container with someone to help guide you through that process until you have that belief and that trust for yourself, within yourself. It's already there. But sometimes we might just need a little help to turn that light on. So I thank you so, so much for listening and tuning in. And I'll say it again and again. I love these listener submissions. They make this show feel like a true conversation. So if there's ever a question, a topic, a curiosity that you want me to dive deeper into in a future episode, please send it my way. I have a Dropbox at my physical office location within Rooted Collective 201. Or there is a description of, within this podcast show, a Google document that you could fill out at any time. And I love, love, love these types of episodes. And we're going to be doing them probably through the rest of this month, through the whole month of November, because I have a few submissions that I want to get to. So you never know who's healing you might impact by asking your question, right? Of course, you're going to be impacting yourself, but your question might support someone else. And I am eternally grateful for this collective ripple, for this show, for this work as a collective healing. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And until next week, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. I'm sending my love and so much light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, boop.
Thank you for spending this sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.